Exercise 4H question number 12. On a randomly chosen day, the probabilities that Hussein travels to work by car, by bus or by train are 0.1, 0.6 and 0.3 respectively. The probabilities of being late when using these methods of travel are 0.55, 0.3 and 0.05 respectively. Draw a tree diagram to represent this information. So, first of all, the three modes of transport are car, bus and train. So let's start by drawing a tree diagram with the three modes of transport: car, bus and train. So the probability that Hussein travels by car is 0.1, and the probability that he travels by bus is 0.6, and the probability that he travels by train is 0.3. Now, one thing is notable here. Since we know that all these three branches add up to 1, therefore there's no other option or there's no other mode of transport. For example, if these had not add up to 1, then we would know that, for example, there could be another option, say for example, that he went walking. But since 0.3, 0.6 and 0.1 add up to a complete 1, that means that these are all the possibilities of his traveling options. Then next is the probabilities of his being late. So if he uses a car, the probability of his traveling late is 0.55. So he's late with a probability of 0.55 if he goes by a car. Therefore, probability of not being late is 1 minus 0.55, which is 0.45. If he goes by a bus, the probability of his being late is 0.3 and not being late is 0.7. And if he goes by train, the probability of his being late is 0.05 and probability of not being late is 0.95. And that answers to part A. Part B, find the probability that on a randomly chosen day, Hussein travels by train and is late. So we need to find in general that Hussein has traveled and he is late. So it could be he traveled by car and he was late, or he traveled by bus and he was late, or he traveled by train and he was late. So we need to write all the three options. Car and he was late. So the probability of him traveling by car and being late, or traveling by bus and being late, or traveling by train and being late. So that is 0.1 into 0.55, 0.6 into 0.3 and 0.3 into 0.05, and that gives us the answer 0.25. Now that was B1 in fact. Now we move to B2. So find the probability that Hussein travels by train and is by late. So that was, okay, so I've made a mistake here. This was actually B2 that I have answered here. B2 was Hussein is late in general. So that is the one that I have answered here. Part 1 was find the probability that Hussein travels by train and is late. So he's traveling by train and is late. So that is 0.3 into 0.05, and that is 0.015. So once again, part 1 I've answered later, part 2 I've answered first. Okay, moving on to part C. Given that Hussein is late, so given that Hussein is late, find the probability that he did not travel by car. So if he did not travel by car, so he traveled by bus and he was late, or he traveled by train and he was late. Okay, so we need to find the probability of given that he was late. So in general, the probability of being late is our denominator, and we've already calculated the probability of in general him being late, which is 0.25. Therefore that's our denominator. So we write here 0.25. In the numerator, we need to find the probability that he did not travel by car. So if he is not traveling by car, which means he either traveled by bus and he got late, or he traveled by train and he got late. So that is our numerator, bus and late, or train and late. So let's put that. Bus and late is 0.6 into 0.3, or train and late is 0.3 into 0.005. 0.05, and that gives us the answer as 0.78.